will take it over after that.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, thank you for allowing me to participate in your meeting today. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for what y'all do each and every day. Y'all are truly our frontline heroes. So I appreciate y'all. If y'all haven't been told that today, which I'm sure you have, but I just wanted to make sure that it also comes from myself. So as you know, I have sent out a few messages, emails regarding University Health System and our partnership with getting vaccinations. I know some of you all at GUS Garcia have already taken part in the vaccination, so thank you so much. What I do want to say is if you have not filled out the form that was emailed, I believe, out last week, please do so. I am calling University Health Systems every single day to see if we can get more vaccines for our Edgewood employees. So I am now opening it up to all district employees. So child nutrition, our bus drivers, our custodial workers, everybody is going to be able to partake in getting the vaccine. What I will say is it is imperative that you all check your email on a regular basis. I get it. Y'all are at home. It is on your off time. But what I will say is that when I get a call from University Health, I have to respond within, an hour at times. So like, for instance, I got a call on Sunday, this past Sunday, it was at 5 o'clock. I wasn't even home. And they said, I need you to get me 40 names within an hour. So that's how quick my turnaround time is for me. I want to say that everybody right now is trying to get the vaccine. So the vaccines are short for everybody in the community. So I want to make sure that we have the opportunity that if I have appointments, that you please keep the appointment, or if you are unable to make it, you need to let me know in a timely manner, because it goes from me getting the information on the appointments, then it goes from me talking to your administrator saying, can you please let X, Y, and Z out of work early so they can make sure that they get to the appointment on time and your classes will be covered. So I want to bring that out. We had a situation, let me tell you why it's so important. We had a situation where a teacher hadn't checked her email on Sunday night, hadn't checked it all day on Monday until about 4 o'clock, and says, Ms. McCoulis, I am unable to attend the time. I said, no worries. I went ahead and I called the University Health System, added somebody else immediately, called that principal, had the principal running around campus looking for this person to make sure they could send them to their vaccination. That was at 4 o'clock. At 4:45, I get an email from the same teacher who told me she couldn't make it, that she is standing in line at University Health System. I said, no, ma'am, I am sorry. You now have to leave. I have to somebody else, and they are already there waiting for their vaccination. So it is that quick of a turnaround time for me. If you cannot make it, all I am asking is to please let me know. I had another person didn't even check their email all day Monday, so that shot went to waste. Because if you know anything, after a certain time, the vaccines are thrown away because they have to use them within a certain time frame. So please just check your emails. Let me know if you have any questions. Even if you do not qualify for 1B and you want to be on the list, you need to respond to that email, because then that email will give me all the information in order for me to pre-register you. So I am actually pre-registering you for the vaccine. I'm going to go ahead and open it up now to questions. I'm sure some of y'all have questions, so please, this is a time to ask. No question is not a question to ask, or I'm going to answer it. So please, if you want, go ahead and take yourself off of mute, and you can ask me any questions.
This may seem, if it's not the right place, let me know, but are there any side effects with the vaccine, taking it?
So everybody is different. I will say that everybody responds to the vaccine very differently. Some teachers say they had no side effects. Some people said they got nauseous. The girl from Community Labs, she took her vaccine last week and she said she got a fever. So every person is different. It's just like when you get the flu vaccine, you get the flu vaccine and what? You possibly get feeling like you have the flu for a couple days. So everybody is different. I do want to say is that we are trying our best to make sure that everybody is safe, just like you have the mandatory weekly COVID testing. So everybody on your campus should be COVID testing. It is passed by the board. That is now a mandatory testing. And the board did pass a resolution regarding vaccines. So if it is against your religion or for medical reasons you can't take it, you need to reach out to our risk management department. But that has been approved through our board, and an email was sent out, I believe, last week or 2 weeks ago after our board meeting regarding that.
I've gotten both doses, Gibson, and I'm a pretty sickly person, and the only side effect I had is that my arm is a little sore now. So I was able to get it because of my health issues, of course.
Quick question.
Yes.
So if we don't have like a reason, we're not over the age of 65, we don't have diabetes, we don't have anything, can we still fill out that form to get the vaccine?
Absolutely. That's why there's a waiting list. So yes, if you do not qualify under 1B, please fill out the form. Because what happens is I give everybody first priority of if they qualify, but then eventually they're going to open it up to anybody who wants a vaccine. So I want to make sure that I have your information ready when University Health System says, you know what, send me 200 teachers and it doesn't matter if they qualify or not. So then I get the first 200 teachers or the first 200 employees, pre-register everybody. That way you can get a slot.
Okay, I was just waiting because I knew I didn't. Yeah, I wanted to give it to the people that needed it.
Right. So they'll be first priority first, but you need to put your name on the list because we will have a time when they say it's open to everybody. What I will say is that there's been occasions where I'll get a phone call at 4:30, 5 o'clock from University Health saying, Olga, send me 4 people because 4 people did not show up. Send me 4 people by 8 o'clock. So I'm calling people on the list at that time. It's a very quick turnaround. So if you get a call from me at a crazy hour, it's because of that. Any other questions y'all may have? Nope. If y'all have any questions, but y'all don't feel like asking on a public forum, please know that y'all are always able to email me. I'm always on my email, checking my email. So y'all can definitely reach out that way. If you haven't signed up and you need the email again, let me know. I can forward that over to Mr. Madrano and he can send it out to all staff again. But again, if y'all have any questions, please email me. So if this is, are we good? Y'all have any more questions? Because I'm meeting with John F. Kennedy in like 15 minutes. No.
No, ma'am. Thank you very much for being with us and taking your time.
No problem. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you for all you do, and y'all enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, ma'am. You do the same.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll hand it. We're going to start our EDGE portion of the meeting, and Ms. Castillo and Ms. Medina will lead us through this.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to stop and hold on. All right, guys, so this is our first EDGE meeting that Ms. Medina and I are actually getting to facilitate this year. So we're excited that we get to have that time back with you. Today is specifically going to cover modeling your thinking, or the I do. A lot of questions have come through our office this week, specifically about what are administrators looking for as they walk through your classrooms, what are the expectations. So the specificity around, should I be in the power zone? Can I be at my desk? Those are all, there's not a set in stone answer to that. You need to do what's best for students. But what administrators are going to be looking for as they walk through your room are the way that you are modeling your instruction for your students. And so today we're really going to jump into the I do modeling of your lessons and the expectations and what administrators will be looking for as they walk through. So norms for today, your cameras are on, your mics are muted. Use technology when engaging in learning. Consider the new idea and the third way. I'm asking that we all really internalize that norm today because it's going to be a little bit different than we've been teaching in the past. So I really just want you to just look at the big picture and try to take everything in today. And number 4, acknowledge the vertical hand raise. So if you have a question anywhere along the way, please acknowledge that, just raise your hand using the hand raise in Teams. And I do want to say before we begin that this will be shared with you. The PowerPoint will be shared in the Edge folder within the Gus Garcia team. So everything that we're doing here, you will receive at the end. Ms. Medina, if someone raises their hand, will you just let me know? Okay, awesome. I'm also supposed to say go Bucks. So just so you know. Okay, so where is this information coming from? Part of the ACE program is we have a partnership with Big Rocks Educational Services. And Mr. Bland and I receive coaching from Big Rocks once a week. It's like a 2-hour meeting that we sit in. And I want you to know that everything that I'm presenting to you today, I myself have done. I've had to sit in your shoes and I've had to be the learner and take it all in. And now I'm turning around that same information to you guys. So there's nothing here that I haven't already done for myself and haven't practiced. So, and also I think everything that they've taught me has really opened my eyes up to better ways that I can help students. More importantly, what Big Rocks is, and they call it Big Rocks because they're little chunks of important parts that a school needs to be able to turn around and to increase their scores. And one of their big rocks and focuses is on classroom rigor, which is what today's PD will actually tie to. And they use a lot of Bambrick-Santoya in their research. So a lot of the classroom rigor strategies and increasing classroom rigor, the strategies that they implement and the strategies that they're working with us on come directly from Bambrick, which is also something that Edgewood has been working with for the past couple years. So modeling the I do. When I talked to the Big Rocks consultant, she asked me, do you think teachers need like a PD on learning objectives and exit tickets? Because those two are very important before you can even get into the I do. Mr. Blaine and I explained to her that we have experienced teachers here at Gus Garcia. I mean, part of the ACE program was that you had to have at least 3 years of experience. And we think that we've seen great learning objectives in every single content here on campus. The only thing that you guys need is a structure. So what should the learning objective look for? We've all been trained in different ways. We're not going to take a lot of time covering this at the beginning, but it's important that you guys understand the importance of the learning objective and how it really ties into the I do of the lesson. So what is a learning objective? And this is the structure that we're going to be using this year. It needs to be standards aligned. So it needs to come from your teach. It can't just be something that you want to teach. It needs to be measurable, and it needs to be bite-sized. Remember, a learning objective is something that is covered, completely covered within one lesson. So it's not your learning target. It's not an overarching idea. Before the kids leave you that day, what should they be able to do, and how are they going to show me that they know it? It's the what and the how. I need the content and how are they going to be interacting with that content. Remember, you will be receiving this presentation, so don't stress about having to write it down. So I wanted to give you an example, and I talked to the Big Rocks consultant because, you know, we have so many different subjects here on campus. I asked her, should I have teachers work with just their content area when we start looking at these learning objectives? And she suggested that we all calibrate our thoughts around one central idea and one type of standard first so that we're all on the same page. So you guys are going to be stuck with math today, and I'm sorry because that's my expertise, but I know you'll get through it. So today we're going to be looking at 7.5a as our example, which says to generalize the critical attributes of similarity, including ratios within and between similar shapes. Some learning objectives that I've seen in the past. Students will generalize the critical attributes of similarity. While this says the what, it doesn't explain the how. How are students going to generalize the critical attributes of similarity? Also, it doesn't tell me anything about the type of shape. In middle school, they work with circles, they work with triangles, they work with pentagons, quadrilaterals. There's so many different types of shapes that they're going to work with. So an upgraded learning objective would be, students will identify corresponding sides of two similar quadrilaterals using color coordination to identify correct proportional ratios. Now that's a lot. There's a lot in this one, and your learning objectives don't have to be that wordy, but in order for me to get the main idea of what I want kids to be able to do before they leave this lesson, I had to explain the what and the how. So it's standards aligned because the identify corresponding sides is the critical attribute. That's what the standard is saying they need to know. The similar quadrilaterals is the bite-sized chunk. I'm not talking about all shapes. In this lesson, before they leave, they need to know quadrilaterals. And the last part is measurable. I am going to be able to visually see that students are able to identify the correct proportions because they are going to color coordinate their solutions. So that's just one example of the learning objective. Notice it's only one sentence. We're not asking you to write multiple sentences. It's one sentence that explains the what and the how. The other important part that I wanted to briefly cover, because this is, I think we all do a really great job of this already. It's just we need to have one standard of expectation for the exit ticket. And this is very important to Mr. Bland. In our meeting, he said the missing part for him, he's not getting any type of data around how our students are doing each day, if they're mastering the concepts. So exit tickets are going to be something that he focuses on this second semester. So we talked about the expectations of the exit ticket. They need to be at the conclusion of each lesson. So it's every lesson that you're providing, there needs to be an exit ticket. It needs to be administered. So that means you need to give it to them. And it could be through any type of form that you're already using. It could be through forms, it could be through Desmos. However you're doing the exit ticket, through Nearpod, just make sure that you are administering it daily or for each lesson. It needs to be at least 3 questions. And he went back and forth with our consultant because he was okay with 2, but the consultant ultimately thought that it needed to be 3 because 1 question doesn't really show if they got it. 2 questions, there's a 50-50 chance you're not really sure. 3 questions gives you a better idea of whether or not they understood the learning objective. And then lastly, it needs to be aligned to the learning objective, not to the standard. Because remember, the standard is a learning target. Some standards will be covered in one day because they are that minuscule and that specific to what they need to learn. Some standards are covered over 3 or 4 lessons. So you need to make sure that your exit ticket specifically aligns to your learning objective. So this is the process. You look at your standard, then you write your learning objective, then you select your exit ticket. Now we're ready to begin our lesson. So we're going to practice really quick. I am going to, in the chat box, put a Padlet link. And I want you to think about an upcoming lesson that you have next week. And I just want you to go into the Padlet. Oops. And I want you to write down this learning objective. Make sure that it's standards aligned, measurable, and bite size. So we're taking about 5 minutes. Pick a learning objective for next week. Make sure that it's standard aligned, measurable, and bite size. I added the link in the chat. You could put it in the tablet. Just make sure that you put your name. We're not going to review these now. All I'm going to do is go over them to make sure that everybody understands the expectation of the learning objective. So Ms. Medina and I will be following up with you on this. So take about 5 minutes to do that. And if you could please make sure that you're putting your name with those as well, just because I'm seeing like your course, but I'm not seeing, there's multiple teachers that teach the same course, please. I'm seeing a lot of really good objectives. Keep this in mind. What does consider look like? So I'm seeing words like students will consider. How can you tell they considered? Just think about those things as you're starting to write these. Because they need to be something that you can actually physically see them doing. Because I know that we want them to consider, but just think about some other words that you can actually see. And I only say that because I did the exact same thing. I have to write objectives for my pod planning, and she was like, you said discuss, but that's not something that you can measure. You can't really tell if they've discussed. So I need you to really think about what's the deliverable after that. Take about 1 more minute.
Miss Castillo, this is Miss Lara.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if when we post on this Padlet, it would be discussed with Mr. Bland or whoever is coming into our class, or would it not be as to what part in the lesson that they're coming in to observe? The reason I'm asking is because I'm looking at my lesson objective and I'm wondering if it's too beyond bite size, but it is bite size if you go in on a particular time of it. Does that make sense?
So yes, that does make sense. Your learning objective just needs to be, so that's a great point, because there's going to be parts of it that you're going to have to pre-teach to get to the objective and what you want them to be able to do at the end of the lesson. The way that Mr. Bland is going to check to make sure that students got the learning objective and that it was bite-sized is how they did on their exit ticket. So you're going to provide the learning objective, and your whole entire lesson isn't going to get you directly to that point. You might have to do some pre-teaching. You might have to go back and scaffold some areas to get them there. But by the end of the lesson, at the end of the time that he comes to observe you, those 72 minutes, you should have reached all of your learning objective within that time, and then assess them on how they did. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So just make sure when I say bite size, covered in one lesson. Bite size just means, but when they get there that day, you're going to, all of the work that you're doing that day will tie directly into that learning objective. And then you're going to assess them with the exit ticket before they leave. Your learning target is the overarching, what's the goal of this? Okay.
Ashley,
Yes, ma'am.
are these exit tickets for the kids in school or in remote also?
From what I understand, they are for both. So we need to grab data from students that are at home, that are also in person, just to see if they're getting it.
But
I
okay,
will say that-
we were told that they don't have to stay for the whole 75 minutes.
Correct. I hear it.
I mean, we can't, I mean, okay, whatever. Thanks.
So we need to be able to grab data. Hold on. Okay. Okay. So we do need to grab data from the kids at home and in person, but that's a great point, Ms. Green, because what we're about to cover today is for your synchronous time. So the I do lesson that we're about to cover, that is for your synchronous time. That is what we are covering today. But we do need to have some type of measurement to see if the kids at home understood the lesson from the asynchronous video. That's a good question. Mr. Prieto.
Yeah, I don't know if I heard you specify how we're going to share the data with the campus, because some of the programs and apps that we prefer to use, they don't really export data the way Forms does. So I'm not sure if you're going to require that, or if that's something we're just going to create ourselves and share with the instructional leadership team, or can you specify?
So as of right now, Mr. Bland has not given specific instructions on where we are sharing this data or how we're collecting it. But he is asking that you are providing exit tickets, 3 questions. So getting in the practice of providing those exit tickets and having that data for yourself so that you're able to speak to whether or not your students understood the lesson or didn't understand the lesson, that's what he's asking you to do right now. As far as entering it into a spreadsheet or providing that, as of now, that is not an expectation that he set. We just need to get in the practice of providing the exit ticket, which most of us are doing. Most of us are providing those exit tickets or closing at the end of the lesson, just specifically tied to the learning objective. Ms. Lada, did you have your hand up?
I was about to say, then I think I did mine wrong. But okay, I'm gonna go ahead and fix it, because you said it has to have 3 questions, right? On the exit ticket, regardless of what method we use, whether it's Forms or class notebook or a Word document or whatever. He just wants data, statistics, and it has to be 3 questions. Okay,
3
thank you,
questions.
ma'am.
Yes. Yes, Ms. Brito.
How many questions do you have to be on the exit ticket? No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I'm just joking.
3. Okay, so we're moving on. All right, so where does this whole idea come from of the aligned learning objective, the exit ticket, and the I do? They are high impact instructional strategies. They're intentional, they're research-based, they're used to support students in achieving academic excellence based on the standards and college readiness. And what are high impact instructional steps? Why are high impact instructional strategies important? They require decision-making to be backed by data and research, requires decision-making to be responsive to learners' needs, requires strategies to assess students' outcomes and anticipate students' gaps, requires strategies to clearly define what students are learning and how they will learn it, requires educators to examine state context and teaching practices for planning and implementation, requires strategies to align to the rigor of standards and college readiness criteria, and lastly, it requires selection of evidence-based intervention practices. So everything that you are going to hear about today has been practiced in schools that were ACE programs before, and it's helped them turn around their campuses to become a B or an A rating. So today we're just talking about the I do, but where does it fit in the grand scheme of things? What is the I do, the we do, and the you do model? The I do, we do, you do model captures the essence of explicit teaching with gradual release of responsibility to students. So this comes from Bambrick, which is Get Better Faster. A well-scripted I do can enable a teacher not only to teach effectively, but also to establish his or her content knowledge and expertise with students. I went through this process. Everything that you're going to do, we broke this up into 2 parts. So we're not going to dive as deep in today. We're just going to give you the intro, and then we'll work on the second part next week. I went through this process and I left there learning so much about my TEKS that I did not know before. So I'm telling you, this process has helped me so much in really identifying what I need to teach the students and how I need to teach it to them. I'm including this great article here. It also gives like a little overview of what the I, we, and you model is. But one student said, listening to you model how to tackle mathematical questions makes us think about why you were doing it that way. It helps us understand how to break down the question. So today we're going to be talking about the 3 crucial components of the I do. First, it needs to be a model, a think aloud. It needs to punch the conceptual key understandings and the procedural understandings. So you have to make sure that you're punching those throughout your I do model. It needs to be aligned to the learning objective, and it needs to be aligned to the exit ticket. So that's why we kind of touched on those 2 at the beginning. We didn't do a whole PD on those 2, but it's important that we're writing those first, then creating the exit ticket, then creating the model. In the I do, the teacher models and thinks aloud and communicates key conceptual understandings and key procedural points. There are no content questions during the I do part of the lesson. This was extremely difficult for me to do. I had such a hard time doing this because, you know, you want to talk to your kids and you want to ask questions, but that's not the expectation of the I do. Students do not take notes. They watch and track the teacher. Remember, this is for your synchronous lessons. So you're going to provide lessons to kids at home, the asynchronous. This is for your synchronous lessons. When you're in person, this is what administration will be walking through to observe. And I want you to focus here. It says, do not take notes. Mr. Bland is not as strict on that because he himself said, I like to take notes whenever I'm listening to someone. So I'm going to show you an example of a teacher that lets you take notes right here. And this is how to set up the I do.
We're going to look at an actual AP prompt. One that comes from a topic you should be pretty familiar with. And I'm going to model my thinking for you about how I approach this particular prompt and how I begin to break it down. And what I'd like you to do as I am going through my thinking for this prompt is to record notes about any of the strategies I use to break down this prompt in a really effective way. So if you notice the key steps I take, any strategies or questions even that I ask myself while I am going through this process, you want to capture it in the space provided. So just so we're really clear, what are you actually doing while I think aloud and I explain my thinking here? Tatiana?
You're taking notes on strategies you're using and basically the thinking that goes along with you breaking down.
Great. Don't worry so much about my annotations here. I'm going to provide those for you. Focus more on the process and thinking behind the annotations I'm doing. Okay, with that said, let's dive in. So
they can take notes. It's just, if they're taking notes, you want to make sure that they are taking notes on the processes that you're using in the video. They're not actually solving the problem. You're not asking them to get to the answer. You're just having them take notes on your thinking. Okay, so what's the difference between a model and a think aloud? Because I know we've all heard the word model. We've all modeled for our students in class. We're going to watch this clip. As we're watching this clip, I want you to write down some thoughts about the difference between a model and a think aloud. And then I'm going to call on a couple people to share afterwards. So be prepared to share.
The most important part of any lesson, whether it's reading, writing, math, or any lesson, is that the teacher provides explicit instruction of the skill. We all throw around that term explicit instruction in our PDs and PLCs, but what really makes a lesson explicit or not? When we introduce a new skill and show students models, exemplars, examples, then we are showing them what a good one looks like. But showing models isn't teaching, and it's definitely not explicit. All we're doing is providing kids a couple isolated examples, which doesn't mean they can automatically just do the skill. Consequently, many of us then go into a mode of demonstration. We say, let me show you. And we stand in front of the kids and do one while they watch. Both of these examples of models, showing a model, model the noun, and demonstrating a model, model the verb, are essential in strong instruction, but they are not what make a lesson explicit. We need to make sure we teach students how to do, what to do, when to do it, where to do it, why we do it. All of these thoughts are the explicit nature of instruction. If we really want to teach ourselves out of a job, meaning the kids can independently execute the skill we're trying to teach, then we must share our journey of thinking. An explicit lesson includes a teacher-only, one-person monologue. It's where you caption every thought you have while you're demonstrating the skill. You talk to yourself out loud. You pause, you interrupt yourself, you question, you make decisions. You are, from beginning to end, going to demonstrate a skill and share every individual thought you had along the way. Although many of us show an example and even demonstrate an example in front of students, what's going to make it explicit is when we think aloud while we're demonstrating that model. Explicit instruction is more than just I do, you watch. When we add in the think aloud, it now becomes I do, you watch, and listen. To ensure you're providing think alouds, apply these tips. Tell your students that in every lesson you teach, there's going to be an I do portion. This means I'm going to do the work. I want you just to watch and listen. In other words, don't raise your hands. In fact, if during the I do, kids have their hands up and they're trying to answer your rhetorical questions, then just look at them and say, put your hand down. This is my show. Here's why. I'm not doing the think aloud for the 3 or 4 kids who already know how to do it. I'm doing it for the other 24 who have no idea how to execute this skill. Another way to reinforce that this is a one-person monologue, that this is my show, is don't actually make eye contact with the students when you're demonstrating and thinking aloud. Rather, look up, look to the side, look beyond, look through the students, but don't actually look directly at them. Avoid looking at the students and avoid talking to them directly. In other words, all your think alouds should be first person. I, me, my. Those are the statements we should be using. Rather than questioning, what could you do next? Better would be, what could I do next? Another tip is to plan your I, me, or my statements ahead of time. In other words, don't plan to wing a think aloud in the middle of a mini lesson. The skill that you're trying to teach is so automatic to you. It's ingrained. You know how to do it and don't even know how you know how. You have to stop, pre-plan, and write out your I statements. When planning these I, me, or my statements, fall back on a...
Okay, so we're going to stop there. She has like little cards that she holds up, but I think that's geared a little bit towards middle school or elementary school, not so much middle school, but you get the idea of it. So you're really just talking to yourself. You are explaining your thinking as you're working through it. You're punching conceptual and conceptual understandings, procedural understandings, and points of confusion. And like I said, I had to model this, and there were some things as I was working through a problem that I knew kids would probably get tripped up on, and I did not include that in my script, and ended up going back and just making it one sentence. You don't want to put too many words in your think aloud. You want to be very direct to the point, but showing your thinking as you go along. Remember, today is just an introduction to this, and we will continue with this next week. So just keep that in
Common
mind.
set of sentence starters.
Okay. So we were going to start solving this question, but we decided to go a different route today. But I want you to think about, you could look at this question as I begin to talk
Think
about it.
aloud is
This really shows how to do a think aloud and a little bit, and not just what the think aloud is, but actually how to create your think aloud. So we're going to watch this short video. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to go back to this slide. Hold on just a second, guys. And I wanted to have a couple people share out the difference between a model and a think aloud. And if I can just call on someone from the math department, any volunteer to give an example of the difference between a model and a think aloud. I saw Miss Warren already took one for the team. Put something in the chat. Mr. Prieto?
Yes, ma'am. I probably have a pretty poor explanation of this, but I'll try my best. So if I understand, I think the think aloud would be more. You're kind of still modeling, but you're using a lot of those I statements, and so it's not modeling the we do, but you're really just demonstrating. I guess when she emphasized you're looking through the students, looking beyond the classroom, you're really just kind of acting out your own process. It's less of a collaboration, I think.
Exactly. You're making your thinking visible. You're being explicit with your language, addressing those misconceptions instead of just showing them, instead of them just copying you like they would in a model because you're showing them the noun and the verb when you do the model. You're actually thinking through it. Mr. Gibson, thank you, Mr. Prieto. You're muted, sir.
Sorry, picking off what Mr. Prieto said. While you're modeling, you're using those, and you're explaining the lesson. It would be like me showing this figure to you guys and say it's a figure, but it's really an action figure. And as I play with it, I'd be like, his elbows articulate, his hands move, and using those the verbiage for that content in my explanation, and that also helps the content, or the content and the verbiage sync a little bit better, because now the kids will see you using the terminology as per your content.
Awesome. Great explanation. Ms. Saldivar.
So the way I think about a model is you're giving them the beginning and you're giving them the end. You're not giving them the middle part on how to get there. And the think aloud is really doing the what, when, how, where. Basically, you're giving them the process of the middle part to get to the end. So that's the way I think about it. So they're not legit like, this is where I'm at. I got to go over there. You're showing them the process of how to get to the end by themselves.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and that was for me, it was tough because I had to solve a problem and I had to have them set up a proportion to solve, but never in my think aloud did I even mention why I had them set up a proportion. And so she said, well, why are you having them do that? And I just automatically assumed that they understood why we would use that strategy to solve. And so you really have to slow down and think about, what am I actually doing in my head that's not visible to students? Very good, guys. Okay, and this is going to just give you an example of what it looks like. We're taking it out of the context of the classroom, and I'm going to put a little bit of sports in here. We're playing. Oh. Gotta love our internet, guys.
A think aloud is different than a model. And I think elementary knocks my socks off with this. Former secondary teacher, I didn't even know about these. It wasn't until I was coaching I really appreciated the power of a think aloud. Let me explain the difference between a think aloud and a model, because for some of us, we might be thinking we're doing a think aloud, but you're doing a model. It's not enough. If I was teaching a kid how to shoot a free throw, I could just model it. Okay, yeah, your form. Woo, we got to work on this. Let me show you. Okay, so you get to the free throw line, and this is a free throw. Okay, so this is what you're going to do. Got it? Okay, I'm modeling it. You getting it? Got it? Good. Your turn. Okay, nothing's really going to change about his thinking or his ability to do it. Let me switch that. This is the think aloud. Okay, so we're going to learn how to shoot a free throw. So the first thing I do when I come to the line is I look down. I'm right-handed, my right foot slightly in front of my left. That's not really obvious, but that is what's happening. Here's definitely what's not obvious. I'm leaning forward. You can't see that. Let me tell you, I'm leaning forward. I'm on the balls of my feet. I'm leaning forward. Now, let me tell you where I'm looking, because you can't tell. No, I'm not looking at the rim. You look at the rim and you're going to hit the rim. You don't look at the rim. You look up and over behind the rim. That's where I'm looking. All right? So I'm leaning forward. My knees are flexed. I'm looking up and over behind the rim. Now I'm just hold the ball. You don't need to spin it. You don't need to do it. Just hold the ball. All right? Hold the ball. I'm looking up and over the rim. I'm looking up and over the rim. I'm leaning forward. Now here's what I'm saying to myself. I'm thinking up, 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 snap. Up, 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 snap. Up, 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 snap. That's what I'm doing. Up, 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 snap. Okay, now I want you to do this. I want you to talk me through what you're thinking as you do it. That's a think aloud. Just doing one. Just showing them how to put two sentences together, how to insert a transition. How did you know which transition? How did you know we needed a transition? How did you get there? All this buzz about growth mindset, we got to replace their thoughts with the thoughts of the expert.
So now we're going to practice, okay? Just have your paper ready. This will be really quick. We have about 3 examples that we're going to work through. I just want to make sure that you guys understood the difference between a think aloud and a model that we've talked about today. So we're going to read the example 1, and I want you to write down 1 positive and 1 upgrade for this example. Keeping in mind, they are trying to create a think aloud for their kids, okay? Caroline is a 3rd grade teacher. She is planning an upcoming lesson about multiplication. She uses lead forward to select the TEAC 3.4K, solve 1-step and 2-step problems involving multiplication division within 100 using strategies based on objects. Pictorial models, including arrays, area models, and equal groups of properties of operations or recall facts. She decided to use the TEAC and write the following objective for the lesson. Students will be able to solve 1-step multiplication problems within 100. When Caroline starts her lesson, she has students open their workbook to a given page. She projects the page using her document camera and help students work through the question while she works the problem in her workbook. Thinking about the think aloud, you can also think about that learning objective that we talked about earlier in here, that your upgrade may be towards the learning objective. I want you to write down 1 positive and upgrade. And I am going to be calling on a science department teacher for the next one. Take about 1 minute, 1 positive and 1 upgrade. Is this a think aloud? Is the learning objective measurable, bite size? All right, Ms. Saldivar has volunteered as tribute. Go ahead, ma'am.
I don't know if I volunteered as tribute, but I just wanted to say this is math, and I don't know if I could teach, or a math teacher can teach all those topics to a 3rd grader. It seems like a lot, so I don't think it's bite size.
Okay,
I don't even know what those things are. And I mean, I think this is a more model versus the other one. I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, think aloud. Yeah.
Yes. Great.
You're welcome,
so what's
science.
awesome. What would a positive be though? Good job. So you nailed the right on the head about the upgrades, but what's a positive? I think one. Mr. Blanton?
Well, that she's actually modeling along with the students in the very beginning of class, and she's projecting the document on the board while they're working at it on the desk, and she's also helping them and also going through it too.
Yeah. So she didn't just say, okay, go. Like, here's an example, okay, go. But she hasn't, correct. She hasn't modeled that expectation. Also, I will say she did take it from a TEAC. I mean, it is standards aligned. It's not some obscure thing that she's just teaching off the wall. So great job, guys. Awesome. Okay, next one. So we're going to read another example. I'm not going to read the beginning part again because it repeats. I'm just going to read the second part of it. So I'm going to start with the learning objective. She decides to use the following objective. The student will be able to solve one-step multiplication problems within 100 using arrays. Before Caroline teaches a lesson, she cuts squares of colored paper for students to use to make arrays. She opens her lesson by reviewing the objective posted on the board. She then passes out a baggie of squares to each student. She shows students how to glue the squares onto a blank piece of paper into an array and lets them begin working. Can I have someone from the ELAR department provide one positive and one upgrade? Give you about 1 minute to soak that in. All right, it's been about a minute. Anyone from ELAR like to volunteer? Miss Riley, thank you, ma'am.
So I think a positive is that she's using the arrays and then she lets the students use them. But an upgrade, she's still not doing a think aloud.
Right, exactly. She's using the arrays and she was specific with that in her learning objective too. And you see that that finished outcome is going to include the array, but she hasn't really modeled herself like, why are we even using these cuts of paper? Like, just why are we doing this? How is this going to transfer to other learning in the future? Awesome. Okay, and the last one, Caroline, same thing. Her objective is solve one-step multiplication problems within 100 using arrays. Before Caroline teaches the lesson, she cuts squares of colored paper for students to use to make arrays. She also scripts out the I do portion of the lesson so that she is modeling the procedure and modeling her thinking for students. She opens her lesson by reviewing the objective posted on the board saying, boys and girls, arrays give us a visual representation or something to look at to represent repeated addition or multiplication. They help us see a problem. Caroline begins the lesson by using the I do that she has scripted for the lesson. Boys and girls, I am going to show you how to create an array to use when solving multiplication problems. Remember, when I am modeling, I will be thinking aloud. I want you to listen to my thinking and the questions I ask myself as I go along. During this part of the lesson, your eyes are tracking me, your hands are on your desk or in your lap, and you are at a voice level 0. You are only listening and watching right now. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to get ready. I have this problem to solve. Miss Q has 3 children. She wants to give each child 6 cookies. How many cookies will Miss Q need in all? I know that my numbers are 3 and 6. I know I could add the number 3 6 times like this. Model's writing this, or I could multiply 3 times 6. I'm not sure what 3 times 6 equals. So one way I can find out is to create an array. An array is a way to arrange objects in rows and columns to show repeated addition or multiplication. The first number is 3, so I know I need 3. I know I will need 3 rows of squares. The second number is 6. That means I need 6 columns. Take square out of the baggie and begins to glue them on the chart paper, counting as she glues. I will glue the 3 rows first, 1, 2, 3. And in each row, I will make sure I have 6 squares, glues and counts. I have to make sure I count the first square I already glued down. It is important that my rows and columns are straight and I line up because that makes it easy for me to see that I have the same number in each row and each column. My rows and columns are my rows and columns straight? Let me check. Yes, they look straight to me. They will be easy to count. So she continues till she gets to her answer. I want you to, as your exit ticket today, that's going to be the last thing that we do today, in the chat, I would like everybody to provide 1 positive from example 3 and 1 upgrade for Carolyn. That's going to be your exit ticket. You're just going to put it in the chat. What's 1 positive from example 3 and 1 upgrade? And then you are free to go. And we'll see you back next week to move into the scripting. Unless there's a question.
Is the upgrade necessary? Like if we can't think of any, all we can think of is the positives?
Yeah. So if you can't think of an upgrade, then do 2 positives. How about that?
Okay.
I just want to say thank you to Ms. Castillo for taking the lead on this EDGE meeting because she did an amazing job.
Thank you. Oh, this has. Did you hear me? Task card. Oh, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Bland wanted me to remind everyone to please make sure you turn your task cards in. This is basically our lesson plans for the week. So he has not been wanting you to go in and write lesson plans in Eduphoria. So kind of think of it that way, but we do need a way to document what our students are doing. So if you have not turned them in yet, please, 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 because Ms. Castillo and I have a deadline of 4 o'clock on Fridays to submit task cards, and make sure that you are reviewing them with students on Mondays during WINS. Okay, just a big picture overview of what they need to learn for the week, and then post it in your WINS every Monday. Okay, that's it. Thank you all.
Ms. Warren, you had a question or a comment? Ms. Warren?
No comment. I saw her hand was up.
Okay.
Sorry, no, my computer started freezing and clicking random buttons. I apologize, and then it logged me out.
So I have a question that doesn't regard this meeting though, but since I got you here, what are we supposed to do for the MTSS and the RTI?
So that time is set aside for when we do start to have those meetings. We're not necessarily having those meetings yet. We need a time where we start to, where we come together and talk about interventions for students. So we just wanted to say, if it were to be one of those weeks where we needed to have one of those meetings, that's the time it would fall. But you will get a notification about that meeting prior to it happening.
Okay, great. I was like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.